What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Boozer here. Thanks for stopping by. Hopefully, you guys having a good Friday so far. We do have the brand new summoning event happening right now, and then we're going to cover it in this video. Let's take a quick look at the Summon Rush event. So, this Summon and Rush event, obviously, if you're participating in the Fusion, you have to take a look at it to see what the overall cost is. In terms of the overall cost, it does look relatively reasonable. There's 20 fragments up for grabs. There's also going to be 100 twisted horns here for 20 sacred shards worth of points. If you guys remember, the 100 twisted horns was only worth 11 sacred shards in the most recent Heroes Path, along with Varkos, the guaranteed champion, and his 5-star soul. Obviously, this is a different event, but if you're paying 20 sacred shards for this, it feels like you're overpaying for it a little bit. Otherwise, we got the standard 3 legendary books here, all the way up to the 10,000 point mark. But in terms of the overall fragments, there's 20 here, and in the Khamir Fusion, there's actually a total of 130 fragments up for grabs, which means you can skip a total of 30 fragments. Since there's 20 in this event, you can actually fully skip this Summoning Rush event if you so choose. However, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at this Summon Rush. This Summon Rush actually is quite good. You're paying 4 sacred shards for the 5 fragments. You're paying a little bit over 5 sacred shards for 10 fragments and 7 sacred shards for 15 fragments, over 10 sacred shards for 20 fragments. If you do the full Summoning Rush event for 20 fragments here, you can actually fully skip the second Summon Rush and the Champion Chase. So that means you don't need to summon another shard during this entire fusion, but that means you're pulling 10 sacred shards in this fusion. It really comes down to what kind of resources you have available for you. Let's take a look further at how much each of these fragments actually cost. So if we do a point breakdown or fragment breakdown cost, this is how much they cost in terms of points for each threshold here. So you can see for 2,050 points, you get 5 fragments. Each one of those fragments costing you 410 points. If you're going for the 2,800 threshold for 10 fragments, each one of those fragments will cost you 280 points. The one that's mathematically the most worth it is actually going for 15 fragments in this event for 3,500 points, which gives you a cost of 233 points per fragment. And then at 5,100 for 20 fragments, it's going to cost you 255 points per fragment. So you can kind of see how the cost per fragment gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until you hit the highest threshold, which gives you a slight bump up to 255 per fragment. So in this Fusion Rush, in the Summon Rush, the most worth it for the fragment cost is 15 or 20 fragments. And the total price for all the fragments is very, very reasonable. I would bet that the second Summon Rush would not have a lower price than the ones currently presented to us. So if you want to skip Summon Rush 2, for example, I would probably commit more shards in this Summon Rush event than I would trying to hope that Summon Rush 2 would be cheaper than this. I don't think it gets any cheaper than this. Just going off of one of our recent fusions, Full and Silverheart, where there was 2 Summon Rushes, and the second Summon Rush was more expensive. The first Summon Rush for Full was this exact price breakdown, and I believe it's the cheapest we'll probably see in more recent fusions. So I'd be pretty confident saying that going for these fragments here is probably pretty safe. Now, looking ahead here at our Fusion calendar, if you decide to skip any fragments from this event, like I said, you can skip a total of 30 fragments in this entire Fusion. And if you got 0 fragments from this Summon Rush, you can still finish off the Fusion, but you must complete the Summon Rush 2 and the Champion Chase at the end. The Champion Chase at the end most likely will be 2x Void Shards, guys. So if you have a bunch of Void Shards saved up, those are going to be worth quite a bit in the Champion Chase, over 100 points each. If you got Void Shards for the Champion Chase, it's probably going to cost you between 25 and 30 void shards for the base threshold. That's my guess. If it's a 2x void event. So you guys got to weigh what kind of resources you have, whether you have sacred shards to do this summon rush easily, or you have void shards that you want to pull for the upcoming champion chase. Like I said, this is basically assuming that the prices here are as good as it's going to get, and you're not going to commit any shards in the second summon rush, for example. I think that strategy kind of makes sense here. Obviously, like I said, it depends on what kind of resources you're sitting back on. For myself personally, I'm not really sitting on a lot of resources for this account because I did just kind of spend most of it chasing Rhea's winner take all champion chase. So you kind of see I only have 5 void shards here. I do have 51 sacred shards. So this is the situation where I'm going to lean heavily on what resources I do have. And I'll probably pull 10 sacred shards for this summoning rush this weekend to get all the fragments out of the way so that I don't have to summon another shard for summon rush 2 or the champion chase. Even though I could probably finish the champion chase just by doing random stuff, I much rather just take it easy, pull an extra 3 sacred shards, and then get everything done instead of trying to grind out the last 5 fragments from the champion chase by basically pulling all my smaller shards, which I really don't want to do. So I'm just going to pull a couple extra big sacred shards. It does feel like an overspend for myself personally because usually for fusions you can get away with just pulling maybe like 7 sacred shards, but in this case I'm going to pull 10 on this account just to make life a little bit easier for myself, especially since I'm on vacation and all that. For my alt account, I do have lots of resources in terms of shards, so I'll probably just pull 7 sacred shards on my alt account and then leave the final 5 fragments to be gotten from the champion chase just by pulling a couple void shards, which I have a lot of on my other account. So hopefully that makes sense. Like I said, it really depends on what kind of resources you guys have. So to sum it all up, in terms of this summon rush, like I said, if you guys are participating in this fusion, you guys can full skip this summon rush and still be viable to get the fusion in the end. It just means you have to do every single event. However, I highly recommend that you do some fragments in this event because it's quite cheap in terms of the cost per fragment. And it's very unlikely that it will get cheaper for the Summon Rush 2. So I would actually recommend that most people do 15 fragments in this Summon Rush this weekend, and then leave the remaining 5 fragments to be done in the Champion Chase for next weekend. I think this is the best mix of Sacred Shard spending, plus the flexibility from the Champion Chase allows you to pull like fragments if you have, or mystery shards for food. And like I said, it's most likely going to be 2x void shards, so you can pull 20, 30 void shards if you want, just to get the last 5 fragments. The other option is just to pull 10 sacred shards for this summon rush, and then the rest of the fusion, you don't have to pull a single shard, don't have to pull a single champion. Let me know what you guys are planning to do. Like I said, for one account, I'm going to be pulling 7, and the other account, I'm going to be pulling 10 sacred shards. Thanks for watching until the end, guys. I appreciate you all. Have a great Friday, and I'll see you guys in the next video.